Okay, I'm going to call this meeting to order. Oops, wait here. And we'll start with a roll call.
Elton? Here. Teven?
Here.
Pritchard?
Here.
Nystrom?
Here.
Melhouse?
Here. And first order of business is the middle school baseball proposal. Mr. Collins, I see you up there in the corner.
We also have Charlie here too, if you have questions. So I'm going to go ahead and let Brett go ahead and speak first.
Great. Just to review a little bit, the reason for the proposal and the discussion is that our Babe Ruth League will no longer be happening this summer, and that leaves kind of a open hole for our senior league age kids, our junior high kids. And I know that that's a concern for us in our community. A big piece of that is Memorial Park being kind of the only field that has the correct dimensions for senior league or for eighth graders. And looking at from a program standpoint, you know, that's a developmental age that we don't really want to lose. We've always had really good connection with not only the Little League, but Babe Ruth within our program. And so, you know, if it's not something that the Boone community can offer, I think our proposal is that we take over that from a school-sponsored perspective to make sure our kids have a place to play so they're not having to go somewhere else or some other community. And that can be a part of our program here at Boone. I know that's something that Charlie and I have discussed, as well as a couple other community members. And I know Babe Ruth and Memorial Park would be supportive of us moving in that direction, as well as our connection with the Little League. So I know that you have kind of the proposal in front of you, and some of you have probably had a chance to look at it. As we've gone through, you know, looking at what other schools have in our conference, 7 out of the 10 of them, also considering the dynamics that we have in logistics to work with one field and the amount of kids, you know, if we go all the way in with middle school and 7th and 8th, we're looking at probably between 45 and 50 kids, which would be really difficult for one team and one coach to take on. But I feel like we need to look at something at least for that 8th grade transitional age to get them involved in our program. You know, I think that's where we start the discussion. You know, what we need from the school district is support in looking for an additional coach for that age group, considering transportation needs and pay for officials as a part of, in addition to our program. But again, you know, it's when you look at it, it's to keep our kids here, keep them playing and give them opportunities that maybe they might not have unless they're able to pull together a travel team or parents getting together. So, you know, that's kind of where we open things. We see baseball at those age groups, you know, 13 and 14, 15 years old as being an immediate need for us, especially with Babe Ruth kind of going away. Memorial Park being the only field that has those dimensions, you know, and again, from a community standpoint and, you know, our school district maybe needing to take control of that a little bit. So, Charlie, anything else you'd like to add?
I just like to stress again the immediate need for baseball opportunities for this age group. The ages of 13, 14 years old, they're no longer able to play our Little League Park within the program because of age limitations. In previous years, we've had a Babe Ruth program to offer those kids, and there will no longer be a Babe Ruth program. This will be the second summer in a row for that. Last year due to COVID, and now this year because the program is dissolving. And so it becomes an immediate need where we've got kids in that age group that will potentially miss two summers in a row having the opportunity to play this sport. You know, fortunately, we've had a lot of really good participation in the sport of baseball. We have 15 to 20 kids that will come out each year for our freshman program, and then we have another between the grades of 10, 11, and 12, another average of 25 since I've been coaching here the past 8 years that play grades 10, 11, and 12. So there's a lot of students there in the high school that play. Without a transition program from the Little League to the high school, I fear that we will lose numbers very quickly. So in our town, in our community, we don't have an opportunity to play. Outside of our town and community, opportunities to play come with extreme costs for any parent involved in club sports. In any sport, realizes that there's a lot of commitment, and especially cost that goes into that. Within our conference, there are only 2 other schools that do not offer a middle school baseball program for their students. Other schools that do not offer middle school baseball tend to be in affluent communities with socioeconomic status, where their kids are kind because they've got the means to be able to pay for something like that. And I don't want to put our families in a position where they would have to pay an extreme amount of money.
Okay, questions from board members?
Is there anything in the works for softball for girls?
Yeah, I can speak to that. I think for baseball right now, it's an immediate need because of the lack of availability to play in the community. For our softball program, those fields and the dynamics, they don't jump from 60 feet to 90 feet at the high school level. And so there's still the availability to play at the Little League. Also from our middle school, our incoming 8th graders have always played with our 9th grade team for softball. And we've always opened that up to our 8th graders. And the numbers just aren't there to be able to add another team or I think last year, and I'm just for reference, the last couple of years, we're at 16 to 18 kids at that 9th grade level. Half of them or less than half are 8th graders. So being able to create a team for those kids, you may not have the numbers to play the double headers and then bridge the gap of all the different high school teams that you have. I guess we're just not quite there for softball. And I know that's a concern as far as when you talk about equity in a Title IX standpoint too. I would say that that's still probably something that we would work and trend towards if the numbers are there. I feel like it's a very necessary and immediate need for baseball. One of the things that, I think we need to also look at is because of numbers, we have never really allowed 8th grade or as they're seeing incoming freshmen play on our freshman team for baseball because of numbers. If you were to put those 2 grade levels together, we're probably looking at 40, 45 kids, which is hard to manage when it comes to one coach playing double headers. You can't get all the kids on the field. So that would be hard to do, whereas in softball, it's doable. And that's another way to look at it is maybe at, if middle school isn't the way to go, maybe it's an extension of our high school program to include those 8th graders where we know there's a big need.
Brett, correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is right now, 8th grade girls are going to become 9th graders that fall.
Yep.
Great season. They play with the freshman girls, and occasionally 1 or 2 of them might play a little bit of varsity action. On the other hand, coming 8th grade boys in their spring / before they're coming in fall soft freshmen, they do not play with the current 9th grade team, 9th graders who are soon to be 10th graders, because of numbers. We'd have too many players.
Correct. Now, from a state perspective, they are considered incoming freshmen and could play for the high school program. It's something traditionally we haven't done and some other schools haven't done because there just isn't enough space. There isn't enough coaches or time for those kids to play. But that's something that we could look at too, as an extension of our high school program.
Those eighth graders, coming ninth graders is the next Lou Brock. They might get to play a little bit of varsity action, but otherwise, they're gonna
Yeah,
go ahead and.
and I think you see more of that in softball, of kids being brought up to compete at a higher level than you do in the sport of baseball because of the numbers and the just because there's a lot more people involved.
The one thing I did notice here that has me concerned is here, it says uniforms need to be passed down, the tops purchased, kept by families. The
Yeah.
one concern there is that going to discourage some kids whose families cannot afford to take home
No,
uniforms?
that's a great question. And I'm sorry, I hope I didn't cut you off. I'm a little behind here. But that's something that I know Charlie and I discussed with a couple of parents, and I know those age families are used to paying a fee to participate in Babe Ruth, and I don't think they would be concerned, at least the ones that we pulled, with paying a little bit to be involved in this program. And I know in the past at the ninth grade level, they have purchased personalized uniforms from families have, because they can keep those, and then I think wearing them for practice as they get older too is helpful. If we had school uniforms, then they wouldn't be able to keep them. But I think in this case, that would be of value because they wouldn't have to pay anything to participate, but they could pay, $45, $50 for their uniform top and then keep that and wear for practice when they become ninth graders and sophomores and such moving forward.
For some kid that his family was really struggling or something, if they talked to you and Charlie, we could find something.
Yes, of course. We would take care of that either between our or within our program, or we would look to Booster Club for support.
Other questions from board members?
Yeah, Brian, this is Pam. I have a question about seventh grade then. Seventh graders going on to eighth grade. It doesn't look like we're addressing them in this plan. Am I right? Or what you're thinking with seventh graders?
Pam, did you want me to answer that?
Yeah, you or
Okay.
Charlie, whoever.
Yeah. And we've had in the last couple of weeks, then that's a stretch from what we had in our original proposal. When we're looking at the amount of kids that we project would come out for both seventh and eighth grade baseball combined, we're looking at probably 50 kids. That would be a need for not just one coach, but in my mind, two coaches. And if they were to play a schedule within our conference, it's split from seventh and eighth. That's two teams instead of one. And to be quite honest, the facility accessibility that we have to play those games, that's an added team. So you've got high school JV or varsity JV, ninth grade, then you add eighth grade and seventh grade. A majority of those communities have multiple fields, or they have a secondary high school field. We just have one. And so that would be tough for us to pull together. I guess we didn't initially, we're thinking, that, we'd love to have middle school baseball, and that includes our seventh and eighth graders. But I just don't know if it's doable if we jump in all the way right now. But you're right. It still leaves seventh grade. Now, that's something that we've discussed, Charlie and I, and then we've also reached out to Boone Little League. That transitional, there's still an opportunity that they're looking at to offer some things for, I think that would be 13-year-olds to participate in the community. It'd be the smaller field, but again, that's determining whether or not kids are ready for that, and that's a huge change between the smaller Little League field to the high school field. So that can still be offered, but again, we're looking at limited facilities in one field, and I think we're all concerned that if we go there, we don't want to jump in too far without having the support that we need. Hopefully that helps a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like we just don't have the infrastructure to do seventh grade and eighth grade younger kids. We just don't have.
You know, because I think the scary part is if we have a middle school baseball team and we have all those kids that come out expecting to play, and we've got double headers where you can only get 9 on the field at a time. Is that a service or a disservice to our kids? And then if we only have the 8th grade and we have 25 kids come out, that's probably right where we need to be.
Okay, I
And
understand.
no, and Charlie, you might have more to add from that perspective too.
When we're looking at this, we thought that we would be able to do a combined 7-18 and a combined 8-19. But seeing the amount of numbers that we'd be having out, potential for over 20 kids 7th grade, over 20 kids 8th grade, without hiring an additional coach. So instead of just asking for 1 more coach, we'd be asking for 2 more coaches and then running 2 other schedules. So I don't think that we can handle that many kids on one diamond, with it only asking for 1 coach.
Pat.
Okay, not trying to extend it to the 7th grade, but just wondering, has there ever been any discussion with DMAC about using their field?
Did you hear that question?
I think not specifically for baseball. Charlie may know a little bit more about the history there. I know for softball, DMAC and us both played at the Little League field, and then it got to a place where DMAC wanted their own facility to be able to use that. I know right now they're pretty restrictive on their facilities, and rightfully so in the middle of a pandemic and stuff. I also know that might be another situation where we may have to pay to play, and we've already got a lot of those contracts with other entities in the community that we're paying in order to use and rent the facilities. So, you know, Little League, Memorial Park, you know, golf course, things like that, for our teams to be able to play. So, I mean, it's a conversation that we could have, and I know those younger teams would play during the day when hopefully DMAC wouldn't, and it wouldn't offset. But then, you know, logistical and supervision and field maintenance also adds into the equation too.
I think using DMAC's facility would be a great idea if we're able to have a 7th grade team and an 8th grade team, and have a 7th grade coach and an 8th grade coach, and then just our high schoolers would use our Memorial Park, and then our middle school would just use DMAC since they as anyways they don't play during the summer. But Brett's point is it's going to come with a cost. I'm not sure what the rent would be at DMAC, but baseball fields are very difficult to maintain, much more difficult than a football field. And the maintenance of a baseball field comes with a cost, and it comes with labor. No, I love the idea of doing that because it frees up our facility tremendously. But those are things that would have to be decided by the decides makes big financial decisions, and then also DMAC if they would be willing to do something.
I know with the softball, back when my dad coached, they talked to DMAC, and DMAC said, you know, we love the high school, we love the sports, but we built our own facilities to be our own facilities, and they probably.
That's fair assumption.
The other thing you have to remember is that if they get into their tournament season, they're not done until the first, second week of June. Potentially they get to go to their World Series or whatever. Their softball team has on more than one occasion in the last 5 years.
Yes.
3 out of 5 years, so they've gone down. So they're
And
still there.
Pat, short answer to your question is no. I mean, I haven't reached out to BJ and again to see if that's even an opportunity or a possibility, or even Drew. I'm a little hesitant to do that, to get involved in more than we're ready to get involved in.
Thank you.
I guess the big question, $90,000 question is, what is the cost and where can we find it in our budget?
Yeah.
Anyone want to tackle that question?
Mitch is gonna look for the cost.
I can
of
tell you the
coach.
cost, can't tell
Yeah.
you which quarter. Middle school.
We've got the coach, but then you have to figure mileage for your bus, paying your bus driver, and then paying 2 umpires for every home game. Away games you don't have to cover for umpires, but you gotta cover your bus.
Right, you probably know that off the top of your head, but
Yeah, with the addition, I don't know the transportation piece. Stipend, and Mitch probably has, but just what is it? Probably, 2,500 to 3,000 or whatever it may be for a stipend at that level. Umpires two per lower level game, so that's $75 a piece. So that's $150 for probably 10 games at home. So it'd be similar to what the 9th grade would have to do. Because the idea is 8th grade or middle school would play at home when 9th grade's away and vice versa.
Basically, you're talking at least $5,000 if you only have $1,000 for transportation, but with the gas prices going up, and you gotta pay a driver probably 4 or 6 hours by the time you get done with the double header. You're gonna be lucky, 10 away games, you're gonna be lucky to get away with $1,000 or probably close to $2,000. $6,000
yeah,
to run this program.
I think that's fair.
For coaching staff and teachers, do we feel confident if this was to move forward, we would have people potentially in place to coach this?
Brett, do you feel like there are coaches available if we were to even have it open? Are there coaches available even?
I have a couple of, and that's one of the reasons that I've sat on our applicants for our 9th grade position, is to see where this would go. We have multiple applicants that we still need to speak with for that position. I feel like in our community and with the support that we have in the baseball program, I feel like we can find somebody to do that. I will tell you, in talking with other ADs, that's not the same in other communities. Other schools that have middle school baseball right now, some of them are having a tough time finding coaches to fill those positions for this upcoming summer. I think we're in a good spot when it comes to that, having some internal people and some community members that would be interested to see this happen.
I'm just a brother. I don't count going out. That's my brother. Oh, yeah.
I think we can afford it as a district, so it'd be up to you guys if you want to go further or not.
Okay, so budget-wise, we're okay this year. Okay. Any further discussion? Otherwise, I'll entertain the motion.
I move to approve the middle school baseball program as presented.
How do you want to say that? For 7th grade or 8th grade? Would you be more specific?
As presented, so the 8th grade program, as preferred by Brett.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved by Mr. Richard, secondary by Mr. Elfman, to have 8th grade going to 9th grade baseball program for the summer of 2021. Is there any further discussion on the issue? Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The motion passes unanimously. Mr. Eastland, Mr. Collins, thank you very much for all your hard work on this effort, and good luck for your teams this spring and summer. Thank you.
Hey, thank you all for being willing to listen and, acknowledge that that's a need for our programs. We'll get to work on it right away, and I'll make sure we're ready to go for this summer. So thank you all.
Hey, Brett,
Yes.
where are you at right now?
Yeah, I shout out to Miller's Sports Bar and Grill in Algona. That's where I'm at right now. Got here to join you guys before I go to our district game at Algona starting at 7. So figured I'd better find a place with steady Wi-Fi to be able to join you.
Better than Subway, huh? Nice hamburger, juicy.
And I just want to make sure everybody knows that this is a cherry Pepsi I'm prepared to go to a school function. So,
You're on a team tonight.
all right. I'll keep an eye on things. Thank you.
Next up is the annual school budget, which I haven't listened to these for 8 years. Let me tell you, folks, it's a whole heck of a lot better than a few years ago.
Yes.
We were talking about negative numbers here, so, yeah, Mitch is probably gonna tell us how horrible our budget is. But, not nearly as bad as what I've seen in past years, so.
We're actually doing pretty good
Yes.
this year, so I wouldn't be too worried if I were you guys. Miss Superintendent Trump and I have been working on the budget for the past couple of weeks. We started working with ISPIS. Larry at ISPIS, he's really good. Trying to work through our budget, where we're going to be this year and what potentially next year looks like. Just before we start, next board meeting will be here. We will have 4 items on the agenda. We'll have public hearing first and then we'll approve them. We'll have the budget approval. We'll have the amendment for tonight for this current year, which we'll get to, budget guarantee, and then we'll also have flexible spending account. All those 4 on the agenda for next week. Next 2 weeks, 2-3 weeks. 2 weeks. As most of you know, or some of you, the budget is a working document. It's an estimate of where we're going to be. We're very hopeful that we're going to get 2.4% from the state, although they're sitting on that right now.
Is that pass both Senate and House, or?
I believe it's on the governor's desk right now. So also, this estimate here has management fund at $570,000. We use that to get to our certain tax rate. That will pay for early retirees next year and our insurance premiums. We did have a decrease in enrollment this year, about 73.8 students or so. And then also budget guarantee. We will need to be on that this year. It saves us, gives us 1% on our budget, all property tax, but it helps us not to go in the red for next year funding.
What was the state aid last year?
2.06.
Yeah,
And the year before was 1 point something?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And then 2.5 was there before, I think.
So 2.4 is really pretty good compared to what we've seen the last couple of years.
Yeah, we'd like to, we used to see 4% every
Yeah.
year.
Back in the days.
Back in the good old days, so.
The problem is that 2.4 is on this year's enrollment counts and not
Right.
last year's enrollment counts.
Right,
And because we lost so many students due to the
Right.
pandemic,
Right.
it's a
And we're-
decrease in funds
And we're
overall.
probably gonna have more coming back, so.
mhm,
Yeah.
We're always working this budget a year in arrears, which is a big problem. It's every school board's nightmare.
Yep.
The fact that they have actually done this by the end of February is a miracle. They're supposed to do it the first 30 days of their session. They never do. Usually we're sitting around till April or May, waiting for them to decide what they're gonna do down there. And I think I heard something about that 2.4%, there might be some other stuff coming yet. We might be a little bit better than we think there. But like I said, this is not as bad as some of you, that 73 is, hopefully it's just a one-time thing. We're gonna see a big enrollment surge come back up this year, which I'm pretty confident we will see that, so go ahead.
So those are just our assumptions, though, that we put into this formula when you look at it. So it's important to know those assumptions going into this document.
As the governor passes the SSA and things might change, but this is as if we were to publish our budget right today, so. That's what authorized budget, as most of you know, this is right into our board policy that our target's 15, no less than 10 and no more than 20%. Screen cuts off the line. You can see our percentage allowable growth for the past previous years, our enrollment, and then our new money. So this year we're operating, and there's our new money for this year. Right away, next year, this would be what our budget guarantee would be for. These estimates out here, all within our board policy. So 13.86 is projected for this year, 12.98 next, on so forth. So we're right on track there to be within board policy. Last year we ended, our spending authority increased 503,000. So we ended off for a good year last year. Another part of our board policy, unrestricted general fund balance, that is the difference between the budget authority and the actual expenditures for the year. Our board policy is a minimum of 15% of that. We have done very well in the past few years, increasing and increasing, and the trend looks upwards for us right now going forward. This is just a summary. Well, that really cuts it off. A summary of our revenues. On the bottom, you guys can see the totals. Fiscal 20 is what we actually had last year, right off what we spent. When we work on the budgets, we get the prior year numbers. We re-estimate our current year that we're in, and then project for next year. So last year we ended at 26.2. My very budget estimate, I think will be at 27 million for this year, and then 27.7 for next year. When we budget revenues, we always budget revenues low and expenditures high. So you'll see that the expenditures are somewhat higher than the revenues, and that's normal. This does seem an uptick because we did have those care funds. That is in this line. You can see that has really jumped next year in this year.
What's that tuition transportation received, 1.2 to 1.3 million? What's that?
That would be for open enrollment.
Oh,
Open enrollment billing.
people open enrolling into
Yeah,
billing.
this is revenue.
This would be in, so it'll be in, it'll be.
So we don't want to see the out then. It'll be-
You want to see the out, or you don't want to see the out?
No.
I don't know this.
It's all in the top line, which is cut off, but this is 17.3 million right here. These lines are all the expenditures that we have. The main line that we need to pay attention to is instruction, which is cut off on your guys' screen. It is 17.2 million we spent last year. I estimate we will be about 18.3 this year, and then we're budgeting for 19 million next year.
And that includes.
This is
salaries.
our teachers, our associates, our tuition, our supplies, everything that is dealing with our students in our classrooms.
That's usually what, about 75% of the budget?
Yeah, it's a large amount. Normally staff are about 80% combined, the whole district, so it's a very large amount. And the rest are support services, administration, business office, plant maintenance, student transportation, and AEA. So last year we spent 25.5. This year I expect we're going to be 26.8, and then next year I expect will be 27.9 for expenditures for budgeted.
And again, that's $200,000 more than revenue, but you said we always,
That's the way to stay conservative.
Yeah, because we always want revenues to surpass what we think, but we also want to spend less than what we want to. And those numbers align with these documents to make sure that we're within our board policy as well, so.
Those numbers, I was a little scared at first when they had those in red. There's a whole lot much mental.
Those
I had
red
hard
means
on that
estimates.
until I
Yeah.
figured out that those were the future projection ones, and that they were all positive numbers, which is very, very good. If we went backwards on this table, you would see that our restricted balances were down around 10, 11, 12%. And Paulette Rumble used to do these projections out. And that unrestricted balance would be down to zero, negative numbers, 3 or 4 years out, until we actually concentrated real hard the last 5 years the board did on increasing our enrollment and stopping the decline in enrollment and beginning to increase. And that's why you see these numbers all heading up. Now, in general, as you look at the
the total enrollment and stayed slowly increasing.
That has saved us, the
It
enrollment.
really has saved us from really having to do some nasty things, so.
So that,
So we did not schedule out an increase in enrollment, just because that's a conservative way to make sure that we don't get ourselves in a bad
Right.
position, because you don't
And
want to count
1%.
on, yeah, you just don't want to, yeah, and we only have 1% for SSA, you'll notice in the future, and we're hopeful to get more, but if we keep it at 1% in projections, then we can be sure that we'll be in a good spot if that's what we indeed get, because there were several years where that's what we got, was 1% SSA.
How long has it been since it was that? Just being new on this, like, I mean,
It's 3 years. It's been-
Fiscal 19 was 1.1.
Yeah.
when I
18 is
started, it was
1.11.
pretty bad.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
So like that fiscal year 20 for UAB, 15.08%, Mitch, that right there means that we spent 85% of our budget that year.
We have, from our expenditures, we have that much left in there. So we have, that's the, we could have 15% of the year paid out of that from our authority.
does that total encompass some of the CARES Act money that we got this year? Or is that
That's
technically?
In the estimate for this year, yeah.
is that third one up from the bottom there?
This one, yep.
Yes.
That's our CARES Act.
Yep, so we spent the first one, and we're gonna spend about 300 of the new one this year. And then the other 700,000 we will spend next year. So that's the plan.
And that basically is gonna help make up for
Our COVID costs.
our COVID costs, which is, they'll help lessen our general funds, so have more money to cover the fact that we're down. How much because of 70 students is what?
About
About
$500,000.
500,000.
So hopefully we can break it even if we come pretty close by moving some numbers around.
Yes.
Yep. And they said.
Good.
I assume some of these COVID precautions this year are planned for next year for some of those costs as well, or for this year?
I have no plans to change anything till I can.
I would not recommend changing anything
See?
right now, folks.
Yep,
We're
I
doing
mean,
something
let's
good.
knock on some wood here.
yep.
What we've been doing so far has been working. We get through one more quarter and a half here. At the same level, I'll be very ecstatic to get through, but I think fall, hopefully we're gonna have more vaccine out, but we gotta remember that probably kids are not gonna get vaccinated until late fall or winter, because they're just doing those studies now, starting them. Taking probably for kids ones can take longer, or they can decide to prove it, so. And then once they do, you got the same thing we're going through with the adults, trying to weasel enough vaccine out there to the Midlands.
I think the big thing also to point out about that money is they decided to divvy it out based on Title I. And that is largely impacted by how many of our families have filled out free and reduced paperwork and have qualified. So in a year when we're able to have breakfast and lunch for free, we still need our families to fill out that paperwork if they qualify, so that funds like this can still come to us, because that's how it was distributed, was based on those numbers.
Free and reduced numbers.
Yeah, the free and reduced numbers, so.
We still need to push that real hard.
Yeah, so we just need people to understand that beyond, if, the paperwork, while it helps with breakfast and lunch on a regular year, it also helps on non-COVID years, and especially during COVID year with some of these extra funds that have come about. They have determined that's how they're dispensing the
In
funding.
other towns, they've used those numbers to fund different other programs. over the years.
Our Title I programs that are funded that way. I mean, we've got, there's
And
a,
then,
and
All
driver.
all federal programs.
All federal programs, yeah.
And then like, that risk program is that funded?
Mm-hmm. Federal funding from that risk program.
There are benefits to that number being up higher.
Was it kind of controversial, made some districts upset that do some districts try to squash their number of free and reduced for optics reasons, or why were other districts not happy with the way it was.
Other-
Higher income.
Because they had very low free and reduced
I mean, like
numbers,
the Gilbert-
but they still
like the
had to spend
Gilbert.
money on
Yeah.
COVID, so
Yeah.
some of the larger districts were in that position.
Fees were,
Yeah,
Got less than we did.
yeah,
Right.
yes, they did.
Considerable amount less.
Waukee, I don't think as much as we did, did they? Is what,
They got about a fourth of ours.
They got, yeah,
Barry got even more, Barry got close to 2.
Yeah. mhm.
And the other money they're talking about coming out at the state level is perhaps some money based on the amount of time we had kids sitting in the classroom,
Which should be
as opposed to hybrid or totally online. So any of that money, we should come out sitting pretty good.
If that progresses,
Yeah.
because they were not going to hold it against us when we had to go the 9 days off, because that was approved by the state. So that would be something that would be beneficial to our district if that were to occur, but that's not gone through officially yet. So
Correct. Yeah, we don't know for sure.
Right.
But if it does go through,
if it does, it would be beneficial to us.
that's one bill we'd like to see come through. Unlike a lot of school districts.
Like most of the bills this year. On education.
So we'll just roll right into our property tax chunk. The screen looks a lot like we're on the stock market, but it's not. You can see last year our tax rate ended up at 18.97. That's per thousand, $18.79. This year we're moving forward with no increased taxes. That's $18.90 per thousand. You can tell our debt service is still at 4.04 at our max and still maintaining our rest of our district programming.
What's the most likely area that would increase our overall levy? I mean, what?
Or if the tax rate would go up, if our valuations plummet, that would do some harm. Historically, we've had great property valuations. Our last decrease was in 2012. Even in a year of COVID, we were up 1.91% in valuations, and new growth just increases that. So
You don't foresee us having to have a sizable increase in our overall tax rate in the next couple of years?
no, we project out, and we're going to be fine on our tax rate.
But if something did go up, could we adjust, are there any that we can adjust, like management fund or any other?
We can adjust that. We can adjust our instructional support levy. That'll help reduce the property tax burden. So there's different ways that we can manipulate that to make it work.
What do you foresee with special ed over the next few years? Julie, why are you laughing?
We're working on it.
I know, that's why I'm curious.
It's going to continue to be a challenge.
Yeah, it always is, but will the unfunded portion or are we gonna have to levy for more and more, or do you think it'll stabilize? It seems like the years I've been on, it's been pretty up and down.
It has been. We've been able to curb some costs this year. We definitely have been able to do that. There's no question. And in a year when we actually have more level 2 and level 3 students than we had before. So even staying stable, I consider that a success, because the numbers of students that are in level 2 and 3 are greater than we had last year and the year before. And the reason I'm not as confident about it is you never know who's coming in. You never know what the needs are going to be. But we are continuing to kind of restructure our processes so that we can better address the needs and make sure that our needs are being met, but more efficiently with our funds than what we have currently. And we're working really hard at bringing students back once they've left us, that they don't stay in other locations, that it really is meant to be temporary and that they return to us. So that's something that we're working hard at, as well as our open enrollment out students that are in other districts. We attend all of those meetings, those special ed meetings, so that we're at the table helping to discuss how we can increase independence of the students that are open enrolled out, in addition to those that attend our school district. So
I mean, it sounds like we are doing everything we can, but I don't want to get into a spot in the next 3 years where special ed deficit goes from 750 to 1.5 million, the levy rate goes up, and then the school, the construction project gets
I
blamed.
totally understand that.
On our tax rate, we can only levy cash for like special ed for that, up to 300,000. So
Right.
we won't be able to levy the cash, we'll be able to get the authority for it.
Okay.
And that comes from the property tax base. So one issue last year, because our deficit was at 1.3, 26% of the school year was not reimbursed by Medicaid. So that was the biggest issue last year. We didn't get reimbursed for that. So we will this year.
So the paperwork and stuff, that side of that's when.
We couldn't claim services when we weren't with the kiddos. So, and we chose to pay the staff. So.
Okay.
As a contributing factor.
Yeah, that was part of it.
Definitely a contributing factor. And I assume we've got the nurses. I know Miriam Mockelson used to be a hawk in there, making sure we get everything possible out of Medicaid. I think she trained a couple of the nurses that are still here.
Lindsay Cox is our contact.
And we train staff in the fall also. Every staff member that has to do the documentation or supervise it was trained, and I was at the training. I know what happened because I was there. And we are also going to be training some new staff to assist in areas where I feel some people are maybe stretched further than they should be. And so that we can help assist with that, make sure we're able to bill for the things that we are allowed to through the law. So we're in the process of doing that now too.
Any other questions on the tax rate? So this kind of outlines our debt. The top three you can see are general obligation bonds. The top one is one of the bonds for this building. And the other two are refundings, and the bottom two are sales tax bonds. So sales tax bonds are not with property tax. So the top three taxes, that really cuts out a lot. Last year we did advanced surplus levy, so we prepaid on debt. So it'd be like your house mortgage, you paid another $500 per month. $6,000 at the end of the year gets taken off of your note balance. So we did that last year for $790,000, and we saved over $282,000 in interest. If the bond doesn't pass and we don't go forward with that, we would do another advanced surplus levy for $875,000, and that'll potentially save about $300,000 there. That would get us to a 4.05 to keep us at our tax rate. If we didn't have that $875,000 in advanced surplus levy, that would be going towards payment for a new building. So that's one of those things we're waiting to hear on how Tuesday turns out. So here's a picture of the budget. This will be what's in the paper. If the bond passes, if we were to publish it today, this is what would be in the paper. You can notice in the long-term debt proceeds, there's the bond. And then we have some expenditures out for building, more than the normal amount. So if we were to go to approve this budget tomorrow with the bond approving, it'll be like that. Tax rate is still at 18.97. If the bond doesn't pass, notice our tax rate is still at 18.97. We just do not have the proceeds and the expenditures along with the bond because we are already levying at that $4.05. So it will not change if we get approval by the voters. Along with approving our budget, we will have a budget amendment for last year, for this current year. We propose increasing instruction to 19.5 for increase in instructional costs, and then also increasing non-instructional programs, so our food service program, for increased supply costs too. These are normal amendments that we do every year, just we don't go over our expenditure line. So this is normal request. Any questions?
With this all being said, Julie, how about full-time equivalents for next year? We started looking at that. Are we gonna have to go up, down, are we gonna stay the same?
So we did not rehire at the lower levels when we had a decrease in students, and we had some staff that retired. If you recall, in the fall, we did not replace, and our plan is to not replace, even if we increase, because we think we'll be able to shift that. Because this year's group will be kind of a small group that will keep going through, so we'll have to shift staff. We're hoping to keep our FTE even keel. Now, if we were to have a dramatic increase in students, then maybe, but our goal right now is just to stay at our current FTE.
Okay. But we don't know what our enrollment is, sometimes we don't know that.
We
until
don't, but this
August
next,
15th.
yeah, next month, we plan to send out an informal survey asking families, do you plan to stay in the district or move, what are your intentions? And then we are going to have a formal registration process this summer, so that everyone, whether you've been in the district or you're new to the district, will register for the fall. So we'll know in July what our registration looks like, and not have to wait till August when people are walking through the door to find out. So registration will help a little bit, but we're hoping next month when we send out the informal survey that we'll have a little better idea of, sometimes people know that they're planning to move over this summer, and if they don't, they don't, but at least we'll have a little bit of a heads up before we go through the formal registration process.
What about middle school and high school level? This won't be high school level.
They'll do the same process.
Okay.
Yeah, that'd be district-wide. It's not just for the lower grades, but district-wide, that survey would go out to everyone. Because we need to know district-wide what our enrollment's gonna look like, so that we can make sure we're staffing appropriately, as well as being prepared if we do have the dramatic increase like we think. We wanna make sure we're prepared for that, but we've met K-12 as an admin team to see where we could shuffle staff so that people wouldn't have to lose a job, but still maintain employment where we might have increases. So, yeah.
So right now, our goal is to maintain the same full-time.
Right now, we're looking at the same FTE.
Okay. Other questions from board members?
So other than state aid and enrollment, what's the biggest thing that could affect our budget in a negative way?
Next year,
Yeah,
open enrollment
Yeah.
increase, large increase. We're hoping to keep all of them. Hopefully
Right.
nobody leaves us.
Exactly.
But that's really the biggest
But I
thing that
see
would
that
affect us
as
next year.
part of the enrollment piece.
Yeah.
I mean,
Biggest piece.
Because we're kind of set for next year. It's just, we don't know where the students are going to be, or where they're coming from, or where they're going. So
okay.
that's why every year we have a rate estimate of the current year, because then we know some more of those things.
and we should know open enrolled out by March 1. So I should have a good idea of, how many have requested to be out. Now, that doesn't mean they'll do that, but it'll tell us how many have requested it. So we'll be able to know that. And that's one of the reasons why we're wanting to send out intention papers in March. Because sometimes you can fill, as a family, you might fill out open enrollment papers, but your intention is to attend. It's kind of a backup plan. And it kind of helps us know what people's intentions
What's your
are.
gauge on how people are feeling about the school, how we've handled things during this year compared to other schools in the area? I mean, are people viewing this positively? Are you concerned about open enroll out? Are there things out there that you worried or?
So my feeling about how we've handled the pandemic is that people feel very positive about that. That's been the feedback I've received, is that people feel very good about how we've been very responsive to the data. when we've had to adjust our learning models, it was exclusive to the buildings and the grade levels affected versus district-wide. So I've had a lot of positive feedback about that. You know, unfortunately, sometimes people don't tell you if they aren't happy. So
I just wondered if there was something specific about open enrollment out this year, or if it's just always a concern for us.
I think for me, the main concern I have would be our online option. And so that's why we're exploring a consortium idea of being able to provide something for the families that could still remain within the district without adding FTE, which is our big trick. So that's why some of the area schools in Boone are looking at trying to come up with some kind of a plan for that. That's my main concern, because that has been something that some families have found very advantageous.
How many are doing the online again this year?
What's that?
How many are doing the online this year?
Now, it's fairly minimal, but there's still a group of families that still very much appreciate that. So we're just trying to find ways that we can still provide those options, but at a cost that we can afford. So that's our issue. And I can get you the numbers by the end of the week. I just don't have
Kind of
that
a
off the
niche
top
in
of my head.
between homeschool and fully on-site, isn't it? Having the hybrid learning or.
We've had a lot of the homeschooled students come back to us that left us in the fall. They're back. We anticipate that will continue. Our parent surveys told us that especially our preschool and kindergarten numbers, a lot of those families said, hey, we're just going to wait a year. And that's what we were told. So we're waiting to see how much what they felt at the time comes to fruition. That's why we anticipate higher numbers in those grade levels in the near future, is just because that's what people shared with us. And we did, we do ask when they don't come back to us why. And that was this year by and large was the pandemic. So, and we've had several move in too. So we're hopeful that those families that have moved in will stay here too. So, as you all know, our count day happens in October 1, and we don't stay stagnant all year. So
We always have a couple families move in the 2nd of October.
yes,
With many
yes,
kids.
we do. Yes, we do.
One year we had October 2nd. First week in October, I think we had a family of 5 and another family of 3 moved in, and which is like 8 new kids move in a week.
$75,000 worth.
Yeah, and their old district, of course, was happy as could be because
Yeah.
on the first they got counted,
Right.
and on the second, the third they moved. So
And every state's different that way. Not all states do what we do in Iowa. So some states take the actual days the students attend. Some states do different things. So that's what we live with, is the October 1 date. So that's what we plan for. So I see a big influx of people wanting to leave because they're unhappy with this, not to my knowledge. In fact, I feel pretty good about how people feel about how we've handled things. And I'm hopeful that we'll continue. If you recall, we had 22 families come back to us this year because of the options we provided. I'm hopeful that we'll continue to see that.
Overall, we're in a good spot. It's just the uncertainty of everything continues for a while longer.
it really does. You just don't know what's going to happen.
So that's why we're
Day to day,
conservative.
week
Yeah.
to week, but Julie's team's doing a great job of keeping this on the straight and narrow and providing the kids some quality education. Quality education that you just don't get with a hybrid or fertility.
I really think the more we can share out what great things are happening in the district, the better off we are. And I think that's the key. I think we just don't realize how many families are unaware in our area of the good things that are happening in Boone. So we just have to keep trying to increase that communication about the good things that are happening. On a positive note, I have received several emails since we've had the app of questions that came to us that through the app, and I'm so excited about that because that two-way communication is starting to happen and people are starting to feel comfortable asking those questions. So, we'll just continue to share and be open to the questions and try and answer them as best as we can. I think that's just going at this as a community and tackling this together is the best way to handle things. And I think that's what's been beneficial to us is we had our community support in how we handled this. They were very good about letting us know where they felt we needed to be in the fall. That's why we had all those survey responses. I mean, without that, I don't know that we would have had that kind of collaboration. So kudos to everyone that's participating and being active in our community and asking questions when you have them, because that's how we get better. So.
And good buy-in from the community on all this too. They're very supportive of us, so. everything's up. Any other questions, concerns for administration tonight? Otherwise, I'm gonna entertain a motion for adjournment at 6:01. This has got to be a record.
Second.
It has been moved. Has there been a second?
Second.
Thank you. Moved by Mrs. Stevens, seconded by Mr. Halpin to adjourn this meeting. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we'll see you guys in 2 weeks' time. Hopefully, we will have had a successful bond issue. I can tell you guys
Hope so.
here,